Hey guys, what's going on? It's Coach Callum. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today we're going to be going over a couple of basics about nutrition. So we're going to be talking about protein in particular today. A lot of questions have been coming up lately with some of my clients about like what really is a good protein source. And yesterday it led to a pretty good discussion where we went into sort of the basics of reading nutrition labels. We talked about like, okay, what is the difference between a good protein source and maybe like what would be, yes, it is a source of protein, but it may not be doing the job that you want, or may not be doing the job as well as maybe you think it is. And then we're just gonna, basically give you the rundown of how to read labels yourself, how to make sort of better decisions for what your goal is, and how to help you sort of feel your best. So before we go any further, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that like button below. The more people that hit that button, the more likely it is that YouTube will show this video to other people that are looking to learn more about fitness and nutrition. So that would be amazing. Thank you so much. Let's dive in. So what really is a good protein source? So I would say a good protein source is going to be something that gives you the majority of the nutrition from that food item as protein. So what I mean by that, when you look at your nutrition labels, right? Let's say I've got this box of crackers, right? So we can see that. So basically on this box, I'll maybe throw a little sticker up over Ted. This is Ted, say hi. When we look at these labels, right, we're basically going to have a breakdown of what is contained in that food, right? So it's going to break down by usually macronutrients and a couple of micronutrients. Some common ones are going to be like the total number of calories will be on the label, the serving size will be on the label, the grams of fat will be on the label, the carbohydrates and sometimes the breakdown of those carbohydrates will be on the label. You'll have things like protein. You might have things, a lot of the time they'll put like sodium and cholesterol, and like this one's got potassium, calcium, iron, whatever, and that's kind of down at the bottom of the label because those are going to be your micronutrients that are sort of less important to the caloric makeup of the food. But anyway, we'll dive in a little. So when we're reading the label, right, what we want to look at is what is the ratio or the comparison between the grams of protein in a food versus the grams of carbohydrates or fat in a food, right? So if we're trying to look for foods that are high protein foods, what that would mean is the ratio would be in the favor of protein, and ideally it would be pretty highly in the favor of protein. So when we're looking at a box of crackers, for example, right, our calories are 100. It has 3 grams of fat in it, 16 grams of carbohydrates, and then 2 grams of protein. So this would likely be a arguably terrible source of protein. So if you were looking at this thinking like, oh, I need to eat more protein, oh great, this has 2 grams of protein, that's awesome. Yeah, great, but you're getting 16 grams of carbohydrates and 3 grams of fat for every 2 grams of protein that you're eating. So if you needed to eat 150 grams of protein a day in order to build muscle and feel your best, right? Like you have to eat, what is that? 75 serving. You'd have to eat 225 crackers to get 150 grams of protein, right? Like it's just not. Yeah. You'd have to eat 220. Whatever. You'd have to eat 225 crackers in order to get your 150 grams of protein if you were trying to get your 150 grams of protein from something like crackers, right? And then with that, if you were to eat 225 crackers, right, you're going to get something like 700 and... Wow, I really should have done the math before doing this. You're going to get something like 1,000 grams of carbohydrates, right? If you get 1,000 grams of carbohydrates, you're going to eat 4,000 calories in crackers, right? Before you get that amount of protein that you're looking for. So if we're only trying to eat, or even like let's not even worry about the calories, but if you're going to eat let's say we're trying not to eat a ton of calories, right? But we need to get our 150 grams of protein because really that's what's going to be important for building muscle mass, maintaining that muscle mass, building strength, and just sort of feeling good and repairing tissue and keeping your immune system strong and all of this good stuff. It's not going to be very easy to do by eating something like crackers, right? So the next one is pretty common, and I hear this a lot when people are like, oh yeah, I got lots of protein. I had some nuts today. So nuts. Serving size, quarter cup. Calories, 190 calories. Fat, 16 grams of fat for your quarter cup, right? Carbohydrates, 7 grams of carbohydrates. Protein, 5 grams of protein. So nuts actually have more carbohydrates than they do protein, and they have about 3 times as much fat as they do protein. So while yes, nuts do contain protein, it's not necessarily a good protein source. And the only, the distinction there is kind of important because, again, if we're trying to get 150 grams of protein in a day, right, you got to eat 30 servings of nuts in order to get that. And if you have to eat 30 servings of nuts, you're going to get something like 300. You're getting 480 grams of You're getting 480 grams of fat in order to get your 150 grams of protein, right? So if you're getting 480 grams of fat, times that by 9, what are you getting? You're getting 5,000, 4,000 something calories just from fat, right? And that doesn't even include the 210 grams of carbohydrates, which is going to be another 840 calories, right? So in order to get 150 grams of protein from nuts, you're going to be eating something like 6,000 calories, right? So when we're trying to get a protein source, especially in the context of body composition changes where we're trying to drop body fat and increase muscle mass, we need to have foods that are really high in protein, right? And relatively low in everything else, because we want to be, well, one, you want to have some variety in your diet, right? We don't just want to be exclusively eating, mixed nuts or crackers, right? You want to be able to have some variety in your food, and that means that if you're eating one thing in order to try and get a lot of protein from it, and it doesn't have a high concentration of protein, you don't get to have a lot of other variety in your diet. So next one we're going to look at, because this is another one that I hear that's pretty common, is something like cheese, right? So if we're trying to get our protein from cheese, so we've got per 3 centimeter cube, right? I don't know if you know what 3 centimeters is, but it's like this big, right? It's pretty small. So it's 110 calories, right? 8 grams of fat in that, right? You've got 2 grams of carbohydrates, and you've got 7 grams of protein. So this is getting a little closer, right? So for every serving of this, or by the value, right, you're getting 8 grams of fat and 7 grams of protein, right? So now we're sort of getting a little bit closer to what we're looking for here, right? Where we've got a food that has a relatively high amount of protein versus the other stuff that's in it. This would still fall under the category of, I would say, it's a fat source. I wouldn't encourage you to look at this as a protein source, and this is purely, again, if we use that 150 gram number, right, you're going to have 21 servings of this in order to get that 150 grams of protein that you're going to need, right? So in that same 150 grams of protein, we're going to end up with something like 180, Quick math is tough on video. You're going to end up with something like 180 grams of fat, right? And 180 grams of fat, you have 9 calories per gram, just for fun. And so you're going to end up with like 1,600 calories in fat, right? In order to get your 150 grams of protein. So you don't leave yourself very much room to add any other variety into your diet if we're trying to get all of our protein from something like cheese. Okay, so we've sort of covered a couple of common ones, or at least a couple of common sort of food items. The nuts and the cheese thing I hear very, very frequently, that people are try and sort of use it as a protein source. So I want to encourage you to think a little bit differently about those nuts and cheese and that kind of stuff. Like, yes, they contain protein, but there is a difference between containing protein and being a protein source. Okay? So especially in the context of trying to manipulate your body weight or change your body composition, it's very important that when we're choosing our protein sources, they're not like bringing luggage, right? So for every gram of protein that you're getting from a food, we don't want to be getting 2 grams of fat, right? Because like the amount of calories that you're going to have to consume in total is going to be super high if for every gram of protein you need to get 2 grams of fat. So this can carry over into things like meat as well, right? So if you're eating meat, like there are differences in the amount of fat versus protein depending on the cuts of meat that you're eating, right? So something like a sausage, right? If you're somebody that likes a sausage and you don't cook the crap out of it, I mean, for me, when I like eat sausage, I try and get as much of the fat out of it as possible, but I just like, drier meat for some reason. I don't know. Maybe I'm broken. But if you like sausage that sort of contains a lot of the fat still, that's about usually like a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to fat, right? So that sausage would be very similar in a lot of ways to like eating cheese for protein. So yeah, it's meat, but it may not be the best thing that you could be eating if the goal is to increase protein without increasing a ton of other like calories and stuff coming into the diet. This would be contrasted with something like, let's use another pork product, call it pork tenderloin, right? So pork tenderloin, for every, regular serving of pork tenderloin, like call it, I don't know, 6 ounces, something like that, you're going to probably get about 7 grams of protein per ounce. So a 6-ounce piece of pork tenderloin is going to have 42 grams of protein, and that might only have 8 or 10 grams of fat. So that's like a 4-to-1 kind of protein to fat ratio. So that would be a very good example of a good protein source, because you have substantially more protein available to you versus the other sort of luggage that it's bringing with it, right? So what we're looking at when we're referring to like lean meats is a 4-to-1 kind of ratio, I would say, at least. So what we want is like more protein, less fat would be a lean meat. Like a 1-to-1 ratio, or even like a 2-to-1 protein to fat ratio would be like a slightly kind of fat, let's call it a 2-to-1 kind of protein to fat ratio as like a slightly fattier meat. So that would probably be like your steaks. So things like a strip loin, right? A strip loin, or like chicken thighs, like drumsticks, like that kind of thing, would probably be like a 2-to-1 type of ratio. And then like a 1-to-1 fat to protein ratio would probably be like we're talking more like sausage. We're talking like fattier cuts of meat, like call it like ribeye steak. Like if you were going to eat all the fat that was on a ribeye steak, that would probably be closer to like a 2-to-1, 1-to-1 kind of ratio. So and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that inherently. It's just we want to be mindful of like, okay, what is the goal that we have in mind here? And then if the goal is to increase our protein intake without increasing the total number of calories that we're taking in, then we're going to need to be more mindful of the choices that we're making here. This is where things like supplements can be really helpful. So like a protein supplement, for example, I don't know if you can actually see that label. It's going to be fucking blurry. Okay, so I'll just read it. So per scoop here, right, we've got 115 calories. We've got 1 gram of fat. We've got 4 grams of carbohydrates. And then we've got 24 grams of protein, right? So this is like 5-to-1 protein to luggage, right? So when we're talking about, I really like that comparison. So when we're talking about a protein, like a pure protein source, right? Something that's like 5-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1 protein to fat or protein to carbohydrates kind of ratio is exactly what we're looking for. And the reason being is like, so this, if you're getting 24 grams of protein per scoop, right? I'm not in any way encouraging you to do this. I'm just saying, if you were to have 6 of those, that's your 150 grams of protein in your day, right? That gives you a total of like 700 calories, and then you have what, 25 grams of carbohydrates and 6 grams of fat in that. So like if you were to do that, then you don't have to eat any other protein in the day, really, and you can just eat other stuff that you like, right? So like fill up the rest of your day, or the rest of the calories that you know can eat with other stuff. And so again, I'm not encouraging you to do that. I'm just using it as an example. But this is where like supplements and stuff can be very helpful, because it can be a bit difficult to eat, you know, really high volumes of protein, just because, I mean, not everybody loves, you know, eating a pile of meat and that's it, right? And it can be a bit of sort of an acquired taste, or like a habit that you kind of really have to get used to be eating a high protein diet. But I think it's one of those things that like it is very, very helpful in terms of body composition and stuff. So I think I have covered pretty much everything that I wanted to cover today. The goal here, we want to make things as simple as we possibly can, right? So I don't want you to think about like, okay, I have to eat 2,500 calories and I need to get my 200 grams of protein or 150 grams of protein or whatever it is. It's focus on as few things as possible, and like this doesn't have to be like a big math equation all the time, but I would definitely encourage you, if you have like a body composition goal where you're trying to focus on losing weight, getting enough protein is going to be one of the most important things that you can do. So if you were going to pick a goal, right, like a gram of protein per pound of body weight is kind of like the target that I think you should shoot for. If you were going to ever do math or count anything, that would be the only thing I would probably encourage you to count. And then just have the rest of your diet made up with predominantly fruits and vegetables, as much kind of like predominantly fruits and vegetables, actually. That would be my advice. Make the rest of your food predominantly fruits and vegetables. Have a little bit of fat as you want it. Try and only have, you know, the bad carbohydrates with like your favorite meal, and only like your favorite one, and try and limit it to, you know, if it's got to be every day, try and only have it with one meal a day kind of thing. Just because like realistically, if you're trying to change your body composition, we want to try and reduce the amount of like easily digested carbohydrates that you're eating, and we want to try and lower the overall sort of caloric load that you're taking in, and make sure that you're getting enough protein. It really isn't that complicated. It's just like, it's not as entertaining as eating pizza. Like it's just not, and in a lot of ways that is the challenging piece about it, is that you kind of have to change the way that you're thinking about food, because like if you're thinking that food needs to be like a source of joy and excitement and entertainment, it's gonna be really challenging to get yourself to change the way that you're eating. So food can be enjoyable and exciting sometimes, but I would encourage you to try and think of food as like, this is something that is nourishing me, right? It's going to make me feel good, make me feel healthy, and help me perform well. And if you can think of it that way 80% of the time, and leave 20% of the time to like just have some fun and enjoy eating and whatever, that is sort of your winning combination. Great. Okay, that's it. Guys, again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know that was a little long-winded, and if you got something out of it. I am glad you followed my disjointed train of thought. Again, please, if you got something useful out of this, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and if you have a suggestion for a future video or you want to hear my thoughts, feel free to leave it in the comments below, or if you scroll in the description of the video below, I'm going to leave an email address that you can contact us anytime. Have a great rest of your day. That's it. Bye.